I do even make the recommendation of planting soybeans before corn, oftentimes.
Hello, and welcome to this edition of the State of Soy. I'm Michaela Jordan, joined today by Greg Shepard, field agronomist for Beck's Hybrids, and we're here today talking about research and agronomy that's going on at Beck's Hybrids. Greg, let's start by talking about Beck's Practical Farms research. What are some of the findings that you've brought to the surface this year that are important to the productivity and profitability of farmers?
We at Beck's have been doing a lot of research on many different things in our Practical Farm Research program, soybean in particular, from population to row width and of course planting date. It's pretty well established that early planting helps yield. We continue to find, as we've done multiple years, I believe it's 5 years, we've found that the narrow row soybeans, 15-inch row soybeans for example, do just edge out 30-inch row soybeans. Something to take into account there is disease, as we're seeing some white mold in particular this year. But the 15-inch rows we see year in and year out are the yield winner.
You touched on it a little bit, the white mold that you're seeing in some of the rows this year. Iowa's weather has been up and down. We started the season with a lot of moisture, and then as we're rounding it out, we're kind of getting hot and dry. What does that mean for this year's crop?
I've seen a myriad of diseases. It's a bit of death by 1,000 cuts this year for the soybean crop. Although luckily there hasn't been one just rampant disease. For example, we've seen in the past, we've seen sudden death just really come in early and rip through, take a lot of yield from the crop. From white mold to sudden death to brown stem rot, even a little bit, which we don't see very often. One of my greatest concerns that maybe limiting a little yield was just that excessive rainfall that we had in particular June and that first week of July, because that's right when many of the soybean fields were beginning to flower and really nodulating and beginning to pump out nitrogen. So some of those fields, especially in the wetter spots, we're just lacking some nitrogen, and so I think that's going to cause some variability out in the fields.
Looking at agronomic practices, which practice, in your mind, do you think has the greatest impact on farmers if it's used correctly? What could help them the most?
I am partial to early planting. That's a bit of a caveat at Beck's because we treat all of our soybeans, so seed treatment in my mind is a must, and then early planting if I can kind of do a two-pronged approach to that, Michaela. It's a workload management, you gain yield, and I do even make the recommendation of planting soybeans before corn oftentimes. Kind of depends on how early spring plays out with temperature and moisture, but we feel like if there's a little bit of a hiccup and a less than perfect stand in soybean, the soybean plant can adapt and grow and deal with that, say if we lose 10 or 15,000 plants per acre. So we can be kind of aggressive in planting soybeans earlier.
Final question for you. When farmers are making considerations on inputs, what advice do you have for them?
It seems kind of like a boring recommendation, but boy, soybeans are sensitive to pH, and obviously pH influences other macro and micronutrients and their availability as well. So don't forget to lime. I know that can be somewhat challenging with rental agreements, but maybe there's going to be quite a few discussions with landlords this time of year too. So bring that up and make sure that your liming and your pH is in good order, because it absolutely impacts the soybean crop and gives you a little calcium as well. So.
During planting season, there's a lot to consider, whether it's liming your fields, your row spacing, your seed selection. There's a lot of different factors that can weigh and impact a farmer's productivity and profitability. And we appreciate Beck's continuous support of the Iowa Soybean Association and our farmer members as we continue to try and increase soybean yields and make it a productive year. Greg, thank you for your time today and all that Beck's does for Iowa farmers.
Thank you, Michaela. Pleasure to be here.
Reporting for this edition of the State of Soy, I'm Michaela Jordan.
Farming is a competitive business, and you need equipment you can count on every single day. That's why for nearly 90 years, farmers have entrusted their grain handling to Brandt Agricultural Products. Brandt's full line of hardworking conveyors, augers, grain carts, vacs, grain bagging equipment, and tillage equipment are made to deliver the competitive edge you need to lead the field and are manufactured here in the USA. For more information on our full line of products, visit brandt.ca today.